This video was brought to you by Henson Shaving. Considering that Reform UK is only a few years old, it's already made a monumental impact on British politics. They've managed to secure themselves a bridgehead in Parliament with 5 MPs. They came second in another 98 constituencies up and down the country, and they're consistently polling equal to, if not ahead of the Conservatives, and even on occasion ahead of Labour too. And this presents something of a challenge to Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch. Somehow, she needs to figure out how to eliminate the threat that Reform poses, not only to ensure that the Tories have a fighting chance at the next election, but due to the brutal nature of first past the post, also ensure the survival of a party once known as the oldest and most successful in the Western world. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the Tories' ongoing struggles, why it sparked chatter of a Tory-Reform merger, and the likelihood of it actually happening in the next few years. If you want more UK political drama from us, then check out our podcast Starmageddon, where we track the successes and failures of this new Labour government. Find it over on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favourite podcast app. So let's start by outlining the political pickle that Badenoch has found herself in. Broadly speaking, the Tories have 3 potential electoral strategies. The first is that they could move to the centre and try and take voters from the Lib Dems and Labour. This seems like the least likely option though, given that Badenoch herself is from the right-wing faction of the Conservative Party. The second option is to try and move further to the right, in order to deprive Reform of their main argument, that the Tories aren't right-wing enough. And it's clear that this is what Badenoch wants to do, although so far she's not really made much progress, and the tentative evidence we do have suggests that this won't actually work. And the third, much more dramatic option is to form some kind of alliance, or potentially even a merger, with Farage and Reform. This would be one of the largest changes to the Conservative Party in centuries, and would be seen by many as a tacit acceptance of defeat. As such, many in the party, including former Prime Minister Sir John Major and current leader Kemi Badenoch, have rejected the suggestion. However, that's not to say that eventually this couldn't end up being the only viable option as the election approaches. Anyway, originally it looked like the Tories were going to go for option number 2, tack to the right. Having been reduced to the lowest seat share in their history, it's fair to say that the Conservatives weren't in a terribly good place after the election. Some though hope that by selecting Kemi Badenoch as leader, they'd be able to turn the tide and begin plotting a comeback. She's on the right of the party and will be able to stand aside from previous Conservative governments, claiming that the reason they did so badly is that they didn't govern as a right-wing party. She could make big promises to govern properly as a small c Conservative party. She could promise to crack down on woke, introduce new restrictions on immigration, and bring down the size of the state. And this had 2 benefits. Firstly, it would account for the errors made when in government, muting attack lines from Labour and Reform. She could simply agree that the previous governments didn't go far enough on these issues, and as a proper right-winger, she could make sure that the mistakes weren't repeated. Secondly, it would deprive Reform of its USP, that they were out-Torying the Tories. The issue so far, though, is that Badenoch hasn't really done this. She's been reluctant to engage the media, and has even gone as far as promising that the Tories won't announce any policies until at least 2027. Now, for her part, Badenoch is hoping that this will give her time to stabilise the party and decide on the correct course. After all, the next election almost certainly won't take place until 2029. The issue here, though, is that others just aren't keen to wait, especially as there's now evidence that as time goes on, more and more Tories are considering backing Reform. This could lead some to suggest that electoral strategy number 3, a merger or pact with Reform, is the best route forwards, as it would eliminate any vote splitting on the right and focus both parties on Labour. For Reform, the argument for a merger is a tad different though. They gained 5 seats in the election and have been polling incredibly high ever since. More than this though, they're also filling the vacuum created by Badenoch's leadership. Farage is a big character and is able to garner attention in both traditional media and online in a way that Badenoch is either unable or unwilling to. The thing is, even with this high polling, Reform would be unlikely to win the majority they want. Sure, there is a slim possibility of them overtaking the Tories if everything happens perfectly for them in the next few years, but ultimately, this would only put them in second place. If they really want to deprive Labour of the opportunity of winning the next election, they need to come to some sort of agreement with the Tories. Working together could put them into government and make Labour's life really hard. There are, though, immense risks for both sides in this. For the Tories, it would be the end of the party as they know it. Sure, reform poses a risk, but it's not as if in the last few hundred years of the party, they haven't faced risks before. Surrendering a significant level of control of the party because of one bad election and a bit of bad polling certainly would look like overkill. And for reform, sure, winning the next election looks highly, highly unlikely, but it's still very early days. If they could increase their seat share massively, which definitely looks possible, they could squeeze the Tories out over the next few elections. There's no need for them to rush things and compromise their right-wing principles for a 2029 power grab. At the moment, this is how both party leaderships seem to be thinking, and unless something sizable happens in the next few years, will probably be how they're looking at things for the next few years to come. But anyway, for the hell of it, let's assume that things do change, and they agree to work together. How could this actually work? Well, there are basically three levels. The first is an unofficial pact, similar to what the Lib Dems and Labour did in the last election. This would see them effectively both target Labour and not each other. The second is a regional pact, where they split the country up and wouldn't stand against each other in certain areas. The third is a formal merger, similar to the SDP-Liberal merger in 1983. This would see both parties work together on policy under one unified leader, under a party of a new name. One Tory insider said that the Reformed Conservative Party has a good ring to it. Ultimately, though, the closer these theoretical unions become, the less likely they become. So don't be expecting a new right-wing party anytime soon. Lots of people actively don't like shaving. After all, it's expensive, with brands selling overpriced razor cartridges filled with useless technology. And even if you do pay for all of that stuff, you're often left with a bad experience. Razor burn, ingrown hairs, and irritation. That's a problem that Henson Shaving have aimed to solve with their razor, one that's actively designed to protect your skin. In fact, Henson razors are better for three reasons. Firstly, Henson's AL13 razor, which they produce at their aerospace machine shop, holds blades at a perfect 30-degree angle, extending the blade only 0.0013 inches past the shave plane. That's less than the thickness of a human hair, and ensures that the blade is supported properly, unlike many other companies' blades, which in turn makes sure that you have a far better shave for your skin. Secondly, they're just cheaper. Those fancy blade cartridges are full of single-use junk, which makes each individual blade vastly more expensive than it has to be. Henson's razor takes totally standard blades, which cost just a few cents, which means that you can save money and can afford to replace your blades more often, so that you don't need to keep dragging a dull razor across your face just to try and get value out of that overpriced plastic. Speaking of plastic, those other cartridges certainly aren't good for the environment either, with 2 billion razor cartridges thrown away every year in the US alone. That's not true of Henson's blades though, which contain zero plastic, even in their packaging. If you want to try it out, then click the link in the description, add a razor and 100 blades to your cart, and then once you've done that, use our discount code TLDR at checkout, and you'll get all of those blades absolutely free. Using our link and our code also means that they know that you came from us, which really helps us out.